Well, I think it's important he clarify. What do you think, Kamal Sibal? Should he clarify where he stands?
Well, I suppose he will get an opportunity to clear it, and he would need to do so when he becomes Defense Secretary, because after the Indian Embassy in Washington, even while acknowledging that he is considered a friend of India and supported India on the Indo-US nuclear deal, they have criticized his statements fairly strongly. And he would have noticed that and absorbed that, and I'm sure when he assumes responsibility as Defense Secretary, given the stakes involved in the relationship with India, he will make the necessary amends. But let me put the things in perspective a little bit. One, that Chuck Hegel is not the only one who had serious doubts about India's policy in Afghanistan and who bought into Pakistani propaganda about the strategic threat to Pakistan from Indian presence in Afghanistan. For virtually half the first term of Obama himself bought this. And Secretary of State Clinton also bought it. And the Americans were counseling us to lower our presence in Afghanistan, not get involved in military training. And in fact, initially even wanting explanations from us about our consulates and this and that. Subsequently, when there were problems between Pakistan and United States, and Pakistan's duplicity became more and more clear, and the Raymond Davis affair occurred, and then Osama bin Laden, of course, was discovered in a military cantonment in Islamabad. The whole perspective of the United States changed, and the United States and President Obama and Secretary Hillary Clinton became very supportive of India's presence in Afghanistan, to the point of even discussing with us joint programs, development programs in Afghanistan, and encouraging us, in fact, to train the Afghan National Security Forces. The fact that we signed this strategic agreement with Afghanistan could not have been done without a green light from the Americans, because it also talks about equipping and training the Afghan National Security Forces. So I do not, therefore, am totally surprised by what Chuck Hegel said. Now, we have a problem, of course. Problem is that the United States is moving out of Afghanistan. There is a dialogue with the Taliban, which the British are encouraging, and all this is being facilitated by Pakistan. And therefore, in this process, they will give a lot of weightage to Pakistani concerns. And we have now a Secretary of State. No, let me complete this. Now we have a Secretary of State in the United States who was the sponsor of the Kerry-Lugar bill, and who has a certain view of relationship with Pakistan, and in fact is supportive of arms assistance to Pakistan. So we have to deal with the new situation here, where we have a Secretary of State and a Secretary of Defense who have certain views on Pakistan and its importance, which will be problematic for us to deal with. But at the end of it, I think the India relationship will weigh very heavily with them and with Obama, and they'll find some ways to correct the misperceptions that are growing.
That's the point. That there is a lot at stake. Raymond Vickery, Christine Fell, let me come back to you. First, you, Raymond Vickery. The question here is that if there is a relationship in India which means something to America, then you cannot have a change of position. Around the same time, in 2011, that Chuck Hegel was calling India a state that, sort of is behind attacks in Pakistan through Afghanistan. Obama, in October 2011, was clearly saying that it's the Pakistanis who are dealing with quote-unquote unsavory characters who they think might end up regaining power in Afghanistan after coalition forces have left it. So, Obama is still the president. What we are saying here is that we want
I don't think anything that Chuck Hagel said is contrary to what the president has said. Chuck Hagel never did say anything about financing problems in Pakistan from Afghanistan. That's been something that Pakistan propaganda has tried to draw out. All he said was that there was an involvement in financing from India, and that was viewed as financing problems in Afghanistan. And the Pakistanis have taken that view for a long time.
Arnab, let me just jump in.
What the whole point was the fragility of the relations between Pakistan and Afghanistan. And to think that India is not a part of that picture is absurd.
I'm getting a rebuttal to what you're saying from Sadanand, who's from Ahmedabad. Yes, Sadanand.
Well, I just want to point out that, the view that India, by building schools or helping the Pakistanis build a parliament, that India is somehow doing something extremely inflammatory, is a paranoid Pakistani view. That is not a view that should be that should be stated objectively. So if he's saying this, you should qualify it, and I think a much more mainstream view and a much more rational view is to point out that India has in fact played a stabilizing role in Afghanistan. It has tried to help put Afghanistan back on its feet. And these claims that any little thing India does, such as building a high school or building a parliament or building a hospital for someone, that this is somehow some awful red rag for the Pakistanis, that is not a claim that should be taken at face value. And if it appears as though Chuck Hagel is taking such claims at face value, that is a problem.
Sadanand Christine's responding from Washington. Go ahead, Christine.
Yeah, so I think that's also a caricatured view. I think everyone knows that Pakistan exaggerates greatly what India does in Afghanistan and what its nefarious implications are for Pakistan. So, I mean, let's put that on the table. Everyone knows that, for example, the so-called mushrooming consulates is absurd. The problem is that not every claim the Pakistanis make is in fact completely wrong. So I'm going to keep my remarks to the issue of Baluchistan. Sadanand, I disagree with you. There are American officials, in fact, I've had meetings with them this week, where they are increasingly concerned about the potential of India to exacerbate the Baluchistan affair, particularly going forward if this negotiation with the Taliban should proceed with Pakistan, because the Northern Alliance, I've met Northern Alliance people who have said very clearly that if this goes forward, we're taking the war to Pakistan and we're going to do it with India in Baluchistan. And what Afghans say, and people in Afghanistan say, is that Indians are not in Baluchistan, but rather that they're working with the Afghan intelligence service, the NDS, to work with Baluch insurgents. Now, by the way, these are nothing, none of these statements are things that Hegel actually said. So I think the reaction to what Hegel said is a little bit absurd. I also think that we should look at how Pakistan, if we're going to take Pakistan seriously as a regional source of instability, we also have to understand why it does what it does.
It is, and none other. I get Casey to respond to you. I just like to make a limited point to you, Christine Fair, that none apart from the Human Rights Commission on Pakistan has completely exposed what it calls the disgusting violations of human rights in Baluchistan. It is not an Indian creation. The maximum number, 210 political activists, 19 journalists, 3 human rights defenders losing their lives in 2012. This is exposed by the Pakistan Human Rights Commission. The greatest form of terrorism in Baluchistan is practiced by the Pakistani forces. I get Casey Singh to respond to you. Casey Singh, your response to Christine Fair?
There's a lot of difference. Yeah. Yes, I'm going to supplement what Mr. Sibal said, that the realignment of the thought processes in Washington, where they think they need an orderly withdrawal from Afghanistan and they need the goodwill of Pakistan, is, I think, fueling this speculation. Now, what she's saying is, they are saying this is what India might do. What Chuck Hagel is saying, this is what India has been doing. Now, there's a lot of difference between what you think India might do.
What Hegel said factually was incorrect. You are imputing things to Hegel that he actually didn't say.
So, Christine, if he says something,
it's a meta discussion. That's why it's so preposterous.
If he's saying,
Hegel didn't say any of this.
Yeah. If he's saying, Christine, that he said something incorrect by saying we are financing problems from Pakistan on that side of the border, the limited point is his view is completely inconsistent with what his own president's point of view is. So all India is asking for, and I'd like to go back to Raymond Vickery on this, India is asking to know whose line to believe in. Do we believe Obama or do we believe Chuck Hagel? And if Chuck Hagel is not to be believed, why doesn't he clarify? And then we'll move on.
You believe both of them, but what you don't believe is the 11th hour attempt by the Republicans to smear Chuck Hagel. That's what's going on here. This is not a part really of international kind of relations. This is a domestic affair trying to stop a vote today on behalf of Republicans who know that the Indian American community voted overwhelmingly for Barack Obama. And if they can somehow put a wedge in there by taking two sentences out of context, that they will have been able to defeat this kind of nomination.
2 points of view coming in.
The way to look at this at all.
Sadanand, before I come to you, I saw Kawal Sibal raise his hand. Before I lose the satellite link with Raymond Vickery, Kawal Sibal's response to the former Assistant Secretary.
No, I think Chuck Hagel made this statement almost 2 years ago. I don't know if he's made any statement of this kind subsequently. But given the fact that he's going to become Secretary of Defense, he needs to very quickly clarify his broad thinking about India's role in Afghanistan and how he sees it vis-a-vis Pakistan, as well as Pakistan's role and the whole issue of the dialogue with Taliban, and whether this dialogue should be conducted with some red lines in view. This is very important, and I have a feeling that they will do it. But nevertheless, we have to feel concerned that given the fact that they are dependent on Pakistan to extricate themselves in good order, they may be compelled to defer to some of Pakistan's paranoia. But having said that, let me make another point which I think is very important. Firstly, the Pakistanis themselves have told me and others that they know exactly who the rebels are, the small groups of rebels are in Balochistan, where their locations are, but the army is not willing to move against them because there is an interdiction on military operations in Balochistan. They don't want to do it unless the civilian government gives them the green light to do so. Now, if they themselves say that they have identified the groups and they know where the camps are and they can take them out when they want, then what is this big fuss about India so-called destabilizing Pakistan through Balochistan? This is utter nonsense. And finally, let me say, if Pakistan can go and arm the Sri Lankan army when there was a civil war going on there, when they have a huge presence in Nepal, when they are active in Bangladesh, and when China has such a huge presence in Pakistan, I can't understand what this great fuss is that if India is in Afghanistan, therefore somehow Pakistan is getting exposed in terms of the threat we pose to them in Balochistan. They have not given any evidence. Pakistan has not given any evidence bilaterally or to the international community of Indian involvement in Balochistan. This is all nonsense, and I think it's a pity that a person as well informed as Chuck Hagel should have bought into this nonsense.
Well, there are very strong views here that are, across India at what Chuck Hagel has said. I think the bottom line is this, Raymond, is that, to call India a country that is virtually exporting attacks into Pakistan, which is a sum and substance. Now, Chuck Hagel can try and clarify it 2 years later, but that's sum and substance of what he's saying.
That's not the sum and substance of what he said. The whole point of his statement was the fragility of relations between Afghanistan and Pakistan. India is a part of what's going on in the region. It is not correct at all to say that, in fact, Chuck Hagel has accused of fomenting that kind of activity in Pakistan. That's just not right.
Well, it will. Perhaps, Sadanand, before you come in, perhaps it will do some good for India-US relations, in the larger interest of India-US relations, for Chuck Hagel to clarify what he said. Sadanand felt that your observation, he had problems with your observation, saying this has got to do with domestic American politics. Yes, Sadanand, to Raymond.
Of course, it has to do with domestic American politics, but that's the role of the opposition party. So I don't see why instead of shooting the messenger, we should focus on the message. Lastly, I agree with you entirely that this is just a question of clarification. What Senator Hagel can easily do is clarify that he sees the Indian role in Afghanistan in similar terms as President Obama. It's a broadly positive force in Afghanistan. If he clarifies this will go away. And I don't see what the fuss is about, is about providing a simple clarification. In the absence of that clarification, it's perfectly fair for people to look at those comments and see them with a certain degree of worry.
There is a great apprehension. I'd like to also say this, that the recent changes in the State Department and the new Defense Secretary of America, there is concern about whether there will be a change in the India-US relationship with that. Perhaps what is happening over Chuck Hagel is a reflection of that. Let's see if he clarifies. Ladies and gentlemen.
That's not accurate. That's not accurate.
There is
at
an
all.
apprehension, I said.
In fact, the relationship
There
is
is-
very strong.
I'm sure
is
it is.
on course.
I'm sure it is.
That's a complete pipe dream.
I'm sure
That's
it is.
not- there's no fact to that.
I am sure it is. And a little bit of a clarification will make it even stronger. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for chatting with me on the Newshour tonight. Thank you very much.